Welcome to Holy Crap TTS, the best everything TTS channel on YouTube. Viewer discretion is advised if you're a pussy. What's the worst form of torture to have ever existed? My vote goes out for the goats. You take rope and tie someone to a chair. Strap them down so that they move their legs or arms. Then take a big bucket of salt water, then dip their feet in it. Leave them like that for about a day with their feet just soaking in salt water. Once the day is up, kick the chair over so their feet are up in the air. Then bring in a goat. It'll find his salt-soaked feet and start licking. And it won't stop licking. It'll keep licking past the flesh and muscle all the way down to the bone. And you know what doesn't get bored? A goat licking salt. You can scream and try to kick, but that persistent salt licker won't give up. It will just stand then on all fours and lick at your feet with a coarse tongue for hours. The worst part is it's just the victim and a goat in the room. Nobody to plead with, or confess to, or bargain with. Just a goat that likes salt. That goat would be the most dedicated, hard-working, and empathetic torturer you've ever seen. How about immurement, and specifically the Mongolian type? What they seem to have done is to put a prisoner in a box that forced in a very uncomfortable position. Said position would not let the prisoner either lie down or sit. Said box had a hole where the prisoner's head and possibly some limbs were chained, thus forcing them to be exposed. They then dragged the box in the middle of the desert and left the prisoner there without any food or water. Death would eventually occur due to starvation and or dehydration, but not before the prisoner experienced the intense heat and pecking of vultures. Testicle crushing as punishments were performed as slowly as possible to worsen the intensity of the victim's agony and lengthen its duration. Standard practice in France from the Middle Ages to the French Revolution was to crush the condemned's testicles in a vice, which burst them as much from the scrotum, then crunch the spermatic cords with pliers. The condemned was turned upside down in order to maximize the blood flow to his brain, after which he was unable to pass out or enter a state of shock until, perhaps, the last few seconds of his ordeal. The condemned was sure to vomit repeatedly with violent convulsions, even well after he had voided the contents of his stomach, but he rarely screamed except for an initial shriek, which immediately silenced, because the pain overwhelmed his ability to breathe. Most men would hang and thrash wildly during and after the crushing of each testicle, and their thrashing would renew upon the crushing of each spermatic cord. The process would last an entire day. This torture method, accompanied by others, was usually reserved for the crime of regicide or attempted regicide. The event was witnessed by large crowds. It is interesting to note that, whereas most crowds were instructed to jeer, mock, and ridicule the condemned, and did so even during a disemboweling, and drawing and quartering, most crowds remained silent and stared with shocked expressions as a castration was carried out in this manner. Onlookers, male and female, are recorded to have vomited at the sight of the spectacle. Pressing. You lay on the ground with a board on your chest and heavy rocks are placed on it until you talk or die. I once heard an expert on torture describe what he thought was the worst. The victim is laid down on a flat table with their bare feet overhanging the edge. With the ankles tied, the soles of the feet are beaten over and over with flat clubs. It takes a long time, but long after the pain stops, you keep beating until all the muscular structure is destroyed. And then you turn the victim loose. Most of their body is still intact. Their legs even work. But they can never walk again without the muscles in their feet. They will be in constant pain with sharp bursts any time they move, as several bone-on-bone movements occur. And they have to live with knowing that they're now more of a burden to their society than a functioning member. Furthermore, since there isn't any disgusting imagery or even that much screaming, you can convince people to administer this torture without making them reluctant to continue. Crucifixion. You died when your shoulders dislocated and strangled you. This only happened after your quads tore and your legs gave out. Brown rats. The victim was completely restrained and tied to the ground or a bed. The victim would then have many slits cut in their stomach. The torturer would place rats and trap them with a bowl on the victim's stomach, then place hot coal on top of the bowl and the rats would get hot. A few seconds would go by and they would go into your stomach. Gnawing the intestines usually resulted in a few hours of agonizing pain for the victim. I don't know if it has an exact name, but ... you are ground up to your neck, unable to move or anything, and only your head is out so you can breathe. Then they put water and sugar on your head to attract flies that will eat your flesh and deposit their eggs inside you, and when they hatch the maggots will eat you from inside out, if you are not dead by then. Being broken on the wheel. You're tied to a cartwheel that's resting on the ground. Then all of your limbs and joints are smashed with a hammer. Ankles, shins, knees, hips, hands, wrists, elbows. Then, the wheel is turned up ways, and rotated. All your broken bones and sinew continue to cause internal damage, but none of your important organs are, so you live for a long time, like a bag of pain, broken and screaming, until you die of blood loss or exhaustion. Hanged, drawn and quartered. First you are attached to a wooden panel and dragged to the spot of your execution by horse. Then you are hung to almost the point of death. Next you are let down and strapped to a table while your insides, and sometimes your sexual organs, are removed and burnt in a fire before you, while you are still alive and able to see. Finally, you are beheaded, and then your body is quartered and put on display in prominent parts of the country to remind others to kindly not commit treason. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not a pussy. Take care.